August, and that means that tomorrow is the 21st. The wait is almost over. The English Premier League kicks off on the 21st, and that's tomorrow. And this season, you don't have to look anywhere else. The Standard Group has the exclusive rights to bring you the EPL. So catch all the action, all the drama, every match, every goal, and all the big moments across TV, radio, and digital. So whether you're a diehard fan or simply love the beautiful game, stay tuned. The EPL is here. The excitement starts now, and Churchill will tell us if he is following the slippery path of Dennis Assetto in his quest for football glory.
As the official winners already.
So I believe you are an Arsenal.
Oh,
I believe
you guessed right.
You
You believed right.
we are the attacking champions.
Oh, here we go.
There's a difference between defending champions. So we're no longer defending champions. So you're getting into attacking champions. It's in the sign-ups. So we are all ready for the next season.
For the attack.
For the attack.
The only thing that I am going to say is that stay tuned to Radio FM and Radio Maisha so you can get all those updates of the, what did you call them now again?
Attacking champions.
Attacking champions.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Karibu Sana, and that's our way of welcoming you. Thank you for being in the room this morning. We're going to be looking at Kenya's debt crisis because it is a crisis. It's a problem. It's a big one. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it this hour and say, okay, what exactly is Kenya in at the moment? Before we do that, Dennis has taken us to Mauritius this week.
Yes.
And it's not on holiday,
So-
unfortunately.
Oh,
A few things about Mauritius. Their population is 1.3 million. It is an island country. So that means there are white sandy beaches. Tourism is huge in the country, manufacturing as well, as it's considered a financial hub in the continent. Now, one sad thing about it is the only home to a now extinct bird called the dodo bird. And in the 1600s, we hunted humans, that is, the people of Mauritius, they hunted it and finished it. So today you want to talk about dodo, you can see it in pictures or in documented evidence that it once existed. Now, the problem we get from Mauritius, when a hyena plans to eat its own children, it accuses them of smelling like goats. How would you interpret it?
when a hyena plans to eat its own children,
Yes.
it accuses them of smelling like goats.
Yes.
So to me, it's if you want to turn against somebody, you just, or people who are vengeful, they'll just find a reason to be able to go all out against that other person. It may not be Arsenal. Arsenal, we are good people. We are defending the champions. So we are trying to defend our territory. But for the other people, they may just come up with all manner of excuses to be either vengeful or to go against the other person. I think that's my simplified interpretation of that proverb from Mauritius.
All they need is a reason.
They
Well
want
said.
reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Kenya's in a debt crisis. What informs a crisis, first of all, before we see now how we got there?
Well, if you look at it from the lens that we are facing a debt crisis, I think it boils down to the stock of public debt that we have, which is right about 13 trillion as of June. So that was as at the end of the last financial year, 13 trillion Kenya shillings. So that's also converting the external loans into the Kenya shillings equivalent. So you have the 13 trillion shillings. So it's split equally between the foreign denominated loans or debt and now the local currency denominated debt, 13 trillion. But now we have to continually service the debt. So we've got this 13 trillion, but we need to continually repay the debt, be it interest payments and also now paying off the debt. So from that perspective, looking at even the numbers, we are at close to 1.6 trillion in the current financial year's budget in terms of servicing the debt, in terms of the interest payments and also now the debt redemptions, no paying off the debts that are maturing. So I think from that lens, probably we may say that we have close to 25% of the overall budget going towards paying off the debt. Could there could be a scope of now reducing it, but now we have it at this point, 25% of the revenue of the total debt, total budget, now comprising of debt payments, interest payments, and also the redemptions for the debt. So to your question, I don't know whether that constitutes as a crisis, but if I may portray it that way, that's significant. We have a higher debt stock which needs to be serviced, but now as we service the debt, so it means that also a portion of the other expenditure items which are quite priority are now sort of pushed further.
So when you say higher debt stock, higher as compared to what? Higher debt stock to revenue and development, or what?
So different ways of looking at it.
Okay.
So higher in the sense that if you look at the debt stock at 13 trillion against a GDP of around 18 trillion thereabout, so it's around 70% of GDP, which is quite high, considering that at some point you're at around 50% of debt to GDP ratio. So that's the relative high. We can also compare it in terms of the servicing of the debt. So the payments that we have, the interest payments as a component of revenue, that's right about 33%. The interest payments both on the foreign debt and the local currency debt as a percentage of revenue. And by revenue, this is now the ordinary revenue. Tax, so it's around 33%. But if there's another way of looking at it, if you compare what is normally tabulated on a monthly basis by the Kenya Gazette issues, so right about the second or the third Fridays, there's this specific issue from Kenya Gazette which tracks what was the disbursements in the income the previous month, and also the payments expenditure, recurrent expenditure, development expenditure, and also part of it is now the public debt payments. So if you look at it from that, it's quite scary. The numbers are something around 70% of public debt, but that is interest payment and redemptions as a percentage of the revenue. So that's where it's a bit scary if you look at it that way. But the standard, if you look at different countries, they typically look at it, the interest payment as a percentage of the revenue, which is around 33%, which, well, may not paint the whole picture, but is still quite elevated.
I mean, we will talk about debt from the trillion shillings. We would look at it in terms of what is maturing, interest that we do have, big numbers, right? Yeah. But while at that, like even the reports that you talk about that are published every monthly, one asks the question, what has been the trend? What does it indicate? And with the indications that we see then, how is the debt that we have and the payments that we must do, because that is the first charge for government, right? What does that do to would-be critical services that then must be offered to the people, to Kenyans who are giving their funds, who are pretty much funding government?
Yeah, for sure. As you've correctly pointed out, that payment of public debt, servicing of public debt is a first charge under our constitution, that we have to pay the debt first and foremost before we think about the other items on the budget. And some of them are considered priority items, and what we call the if you look at the division of revenue bill, it prioritizes some of these expenditure items that after you've settled the public debt, now you have to go to those payments. So looking at it this way, that close to 70% of the ordinary revenue, this is now tax revenue and the non-tax revenue, ignoring the AIA. So AIA is now this revenue that is generated by the ministries, parastatals, ministries, state departments and agencies, and then they are spent. They are not taken to the consolidated fund, so they are spent at source. That's what you call appropriation in aid.
Appropriation in aid. What kind of revenues are
levies,
counties,
such as road maintenance levy,
fuel levy.
Petroleum. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So those levies are generated and they are not sent to the consolidated fund.
Okay.
So they are spent at source. But now what you consider the ordinary revenue, the revenue, be it non-tax revenue, investment income, dividend income, or the tax revenue collectively, which having been collected, they are deposited in the consolidated fund. And from there is where the servicing of debt first and foremost has to be done. And whatever remains is now goes into the priority sector items, such as I think security agencies, partly education sector, the health sector, and then the balance is now where the additional borrowing comes from. So if you look at the division of revenue, we have close to close to 2.9 trillion that is supposed to be equally disbursed between the national government and the counties. Counties is 428 billion in the current financial year. So everything else that is not able to be disbursed from this 2.9 trillion is now where borrowing comes from. Yeah.
Okay. I want to look at two of the things that you've mentioned: foreign-dominated debt, and local denominated debt.
Yeah.
Essentially, local denominated debt is that which is taken from local banks and local institutions.
Yes.
Foreign and in local currency.
Local currency.
Now, the foreign debt is the money that is borrowed in obviously foreign currency, USD, for the most part.
Yeah.
Which of these two is the problem?
Which, well, it's that's quite a loaded question. So there's no straight answer that this is the most problematic. But if you look at the domestic debt is considered commercial. The borrowing in domestic debt is considered commercial in commercial terms, where that means that if the government comes to the market or to borrow treasury bills on a weekly basis, the target is 28 billion on a weekly basis, and then on a monthly basis could be anything. Last week, the government was targeting 150 billion from the infrastructure bonds. The demand that came, or the interest that the demand from investors towards this auction was around 460 billion, and then they accepted 312 billion. So at market rates already, but though the coupon rates had already been determined, by coupon rate is now the interest that the government will be paying on this debt in any given year. So that is in commercial terms, if you look at it, the domestic debt. So depending on the prevailing circumstances, the coupon rate or the interest on this debt could be high or it could be low. In February 2024, the government issued an infrastructure bond at an interest rate of 18.5%, which is staggeringly high. In other months, we've seen 11%. Treasury bills right now are at 8% to 10, between 8% to 10%. 1.5 years ago, we were talking about 15%, 16%. So it has come low. So these are determined by the prevailing market conditions at that point. So
in Kenya?
In Kenya.
Okay.
In Kenya. If we now turn our attention to the external debt, there are three components to this. So the first is now the multilateral external debt. By multilateral is now Kenya borrowing from multilateral institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, Africa Development Bank. So those are called multilateral institutions. And then we also have bilateral loans or bilateral debt. This is now Kenya borrowing from other countries, be it China, be it US, be it France, whichever, but on a country-to-country basis. So you find that these kind of loans, they tend to be semi-concessional, or concessional. So concessional could be the fact that now once you get a loan, you don't immediately repay it back. There's like a grace period, be it 5 years, 10 years, and then you find that even the term of the loan or the term of the debt is quite long. It gives the government even some breathing space to be able to repay it back over a long, extended period of time. So that's the concessional terms. We also have semi-concessional terms, which is somewhere in the not the 30 years, 40-year loan, but probably like 10 years loan, but slightly expensive. So you find that this, be it semi-concessional or the concessional loans, you find that they are kind of the interest, because on the external debt is quite low, say 5% on the foreign currency. So it could be 5% on the dollar, 6% on whichever currency it is, external currency. And then we have now an equivalent of our local borrowing in commercial terms. Now we also have external commercial borrowing. That's where the Eurobonds come in, the syndicated loans comes in. So those tends to be anything as we've seen 8%, 9% thereabout. Now the interest that we get. So if you look at it broadly, you find that collectively the payments, the interest on external debt, because of the component of concessional terms, semi-concessional terms, some of them have zero interest payments, zero interest costs on them. And then you also look at the commercial loans, which are quite high. So if you combine them, you find that the servicing of foreign loans is relatively low. So the split between interest that goes to foreign loans and the interest that goes to domestic loan, you find that is roughly 70 to 80% payment on the local loans, local debt, whereas the balance now is on external debt.
And the local debt is more expensive.
Yeah.
And can we say that the local debt actually gobbles up a lot of what could be left available for the private sector to then inject into, that would essentially boost the economy?
Yeah, to a relatively, you can say that that's what you call crowding out effect, where that when the government comes to borrow from the market domestically, and you find that a number of the participants that come in are banks coming in to lend to the government. So it means that they don't have the resources to be able to lend to the riskier segment of the economy, the real sector. So because of that, so we don't have the monies that should be or lending by banks to the private sector is somewhat stifled, because it's easy now to lend to the government. But that said, let me just sort of paint a picture of the recent developments. We've seen that even the central bank, there's been some measures from the central bank. They have reduced the benchmark lending rate. And a result of that, and all the banks are somehow towing the line, in the sense that we've seen the efforts of pivoting to what we call the risk-based credit lending. And the fact that now, as the CBK is reducing its lending rate, all the banks' lending rate similarly follow what we call the transmission mechanism has really improved because of that. And because of that, you're seeing that even the lending to the private sector has greatly increased, despite the fact that even the government is coming to the market raising 312 billion, as was the case last week. But still, we are seeing that there's still that vibrant lending to the private sector because of the efforts that have been done so far. As the start of last year, lending to the private sector was in negative. So that means that if you compared the total credit that has been lent out by banks in January 2025 vis-a-vis where it was in January 2024, it was a contraction, I think 2%. But right now, if you compare the stock of credit to the private sector as of June, July, thereabout, compared to where the levels they were a year ago, is now in double digits. So that's a good thing, that despite all this, so somewhat you can say crowding out or effect, but you're still seeing that there's still vibrancy in the private sector.
I mean, if you think of debt as the first charge, and the government noting the same, the government has to come up with creative ways of raising enough funds to be able to meet their obligations. That would mean finding new ways of raising more taxes for them to be able to meet their obligation. Now, with that then, how does what is considered to be high debt affecting cost of living in the country and inflation, if that would be a question one asks?
The nexus between the high debt and inflation in the country.
Inflation and cost of living.
And cost of living. So something that you mentioned as I come to your question around the ability of the government sort of to pivot away from borrowing the debt and also raising the revenues here. You can see by and large, if you look at it, if you look at the numbers for the current financial year, that the intention was for the authorities to be able to raise taxes, or rather to generate taxes based on the targets that were there. So there was an increase of around 300 billion. The ordinary revenue target between what was there last financial year that ended in June, and the current financial year. But having seen the numbers that came out as of the end of last financial year, I think that by and large it will be difficult for the authorities to be able to raise the revenue. So it's one thing to have a target, and it's another thing how the actual pans out the outturn comes out in any given financial year. We've been seeing that there's some shortfalls, some revisions in the revenues here in there, year in, year out, in any given financial year. So that also means that even as this current financial year rolls by, it will be challenging for the authorities to be able to meet the revenue target. So we should expect some revisions in the target as we see the outturn actually coming out. So the question around the debt that we have and the cost of living. So these are, let me just sort of disaggregate it. So the cost of living speaks about inflation, but the inflation, there are two facets to it. There's the costs or the costs getting higher. Look at 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 5 months ago, when the US-Iran war blew up, and the cost of fuel jumped because of this crisis that panned out. And because of that, it filtered into the Kenyan economy because we import the oil, but the oil prices had gone higher, and oil drives everything. So because of that, you find that there's a cost of living crisis that has to be tackled, but which was coming from external factors. This is a cost issue. On the other side, we could see that some of the inflationary components are demand factors, whereby Dennis and they have some higher disposable income this year vis-a-vis how it was last year. I hope that's the truth. I really hope. And then because of that, and because of that, so there's this demand of commodities, buying commodities, and then the prices of those commodities goes higher
because of demand.
Because of that, but that one we haven't seen that filtering in the economy, in the sense that ideally, if that was the case, what you call the core inflation. Core inflation is now, they are not those volatile components, be it on the food side, be it on the fuel. These are now the core, which could ideally be driven by demand or higher disposable income, but that is not the case. So I find that our inflation largely has been driven from a cost side as opposed to the demand side. And because of that, we've seen that even the government coming in to address those issues, the halving of the VAT, because VAT is also an input on the eventual pump price, reduced it from 16% to 8%. So that is a reduction in terms of the revenue that the government is getting. And that meant that even we saw a supplementary tool that was brought sometime towards the end of the last financial year as a result of those factors. So because of that, you find that even there were some revisions in the borrowing, because this crisis has happened, US-Iran war has flared up, and because of that, now they had to address the situation. So they reduced the VAT on fuel. Initially, it was for 3 months, and now has been extended for another 3 months till October. And remember, we are getting into an electioneering period.
So we're already there.
We're already there.
Yeah.
So it means that even the odds of that being lifted, I don't think it might be lifted.
So am I hearing you say that the halving of VAT is actually a problem and not a solution? So it could be a solution in the micro, whereby you're saying if you have the VAT on fuel and fuel products, that what you do is that you make it a little bit easier for the Kenyan at the micro level. But when you look at the economy on a broader scale, that the economy actually takes a hit when you say that your revenue has reduced. So there's certain things that you're not able to do. Service debt, pursue development. Is that what you're saying?
Partly, in the sense that was just one part of the story. But also before that, the economy was not faring as per the expectations. The assumptions that underpinned the revenue projections, the fact that now we are not able to meet the revenue projections that was there in the last financial year, just speaks to an overall fragile economic environment.
You're such an economist, Churchill. Can you say that the economy was doing badly? I can see you struggling. I can see you really struggling.
Fragile economic environment.
So we've learned something new even as we take a break.
It's fragile.
That the economy is fragile, and what else did you say?
Fragile economic environment.
That we are operating in a fragile economic environment. That's what we're going to call it now.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to come back after this break, and then maybe you can let us know if the country, how the education sector told us just recently that they actually don't know the unit cost of education for a child from the time that they are 3, 4 when they get into school until they are about to enter into university. Does Kenya know its debt stock, what it was for each? And can we pin a project, because we know why you can borrow in Kenya? Can you pin a project to the money? Kenya's debt crisis, I think we've established so far that there is a problem, and a big one, whereby if 13 trillion to 18 trillion gives you about 70% is what you're paying in debt, it was your first charge, that's what you're paying. So then the questions come in that where then do you have wiggle room for development, which is a big issue for, what did that guy who frowns a lot call Kenya? Middle income economy, lower middle income something. Moody said Kenya is now middle income, isn't it? So that for a middle income economy, your development index must be on the rise. Professor Hino the other day told Kenya, first deal with corruption, but at the same time, look at the indicators that if you want to get to a particular place, that you're going to have to be growing at 10% every year. Not 10% this year, and maybe we do 7% next year. You're going to have to be growing at 10% every year for the next 35 years in order to reach any kind of status. Can all of these things happen in the same space where you have this big debt? And if you do, should we not be able to point very clearly to the things that brought about this debt in the first place? Because we know the two incidences in which Kenya can borrow, according to the Constitution, the bigger one here being for development. Should we not be able to see for each shilling that has been borrowed this is the project that it went to, speaking also to a public debt register.
Wow, quite litany of questions that you've thrown at me. Let me take a dig at them. So the issue is growth, ultimately, the 10% growth. And this is also the growth that was envisaged under the current Vision 2030. That each and every year we need to be growing at a real GDP growth rate of 10%. By that I mean, we have, say, this economy at 18%. So 18%, that is now what you call the nominal GDP. That's the overall GDP as it is, the market pricing. But we tend now to look at 18 trillion in 2026. And then we have a base year, 2016 thereabout. So 18 trillion in 2026. What was its equivalent GDP in 2016? And that's what is normally used for comparison and for generating what we call real GDP numbers. But ultimately, we need to be at least 10%. That was the Vision 2030. So the prof who spoke, or this Vision 2060 is still a guideline. We don't have the estimates. We don't have solid numbers at this point. But if you can take that as a guide, it's still that we are still retaining the 10% real GDP numbers that we had for the current, in Vision 2030, sort of retaining it even going forward. But what does that mean? It means that if you look at it, if you can grow a nominal, so real GDP, and then you add the inflation, gives you a nominal GDP. That's just a good thumb of rule for you to get nominal GDP growth. So for us, 18%, so probably we need to grow at 15% in nominal GDP growth year in, year out to be able to generate 10% real GDP growth.
And what is it right now?
Right now it's around 8%. It's been coming lower. At some point, 2-3 years ago, it was 12%, but it is grinding lower in nominal GDP terms. But that, if you can be able to generate at least 15% nominal GDP growth, just rough numbers, 10% real GDP, and then the 5% inflation, which is the target, at least it can you can now be able to comfortably grow your economy. And also at the same time, remember that there's the revenue numbers are pegged on nominal GDP growth. So if you can grow 15% nominal, so that means that even your revenue is growing at that rate, nominal 15% growth rate, as opposed to the 10% real GDP. So that means that you cannot be able to achieve fiscal consolidation because your tax revenue is growing, your non-tax revenue is growing. A bit of this appropriation in aid revenue is also growing because the nominal GDP numbers are quite good. So you can lean away from the debt issue. The other aspect that you asked was touching on whether we can pin any project that has been funded by debt. I asked this question 50 years ago, that could have been possible because then we had largely the multilateral debt, the World Banks coming in to finance the projects. So the loans were specific, were targeted. Some of these housing projects that were done in Islands, they were from debt, not from tax revenue. The roads that were being built, in fact, I was home the other day, my home county is here, county. So I was being shown that one of the major roads that plies between Kisumu all the way to Busia is a road that was built in 1950s. So if we can go to external debt register that was there even 10 years, you can be able to see that project because these projects were being financed for long term, 40, 50 years. So there's a higher chance that I can be able to pinpoint that project within the external debt register 10 years, 20 years ago. So, but right now, because of the mix of, we have the domestic debt, which is not pegged to specific projects. So the combination of debt accumulation has now moved. We've moved away from the multilateral financing that was there 50 years ago, and now we've onboarded also we have the domestic borrowing, treasury bills, treasury bonds. We also do have the euro bonds. We also have within the multilateral financing, we have what you call budget support, the IMF financing, the World Bank, what you call development policy operation. They are not pegged to specific projects as such or something that you can now be able to see, but these are now conditions that the government needs to meet before financing.
What is budgetary support? It sounds to me like you made your budget and you told everybody about it, but you don't have enough money to finance the budget. So 90 days towards the end of the financial year, you knock on the door of the IMF and you say, will you support our budget? And then they give you some billions, and then you say you're able to, because that's what it goes to, isn't it, Churchill? It goes to paying overheads. It goes to paying salaries. Because we saw it just the other day, where Treasury is asking to buddy up with IMF once again to say, hey, can we have a further conversation? Because we kind of need help. We're not going to be able to meet the budget shortfall, which is one of the instances in which Kenya can borrow. The other, we know, is for development. So is budgetary support saying, can't meet how much I need to pay salaries? Is that what it is?
So it's, how can I explain it? So it's, and just to correct you, some of this, the budget support, you can't just come with it like in 90 days timeline. It's something that you've already planned. It's just that, for instance, the IMF program that we entered from 2021 that was to lapse last year in March 2025. So the thing is, you don't get the $4 billion tranche at once. So every 6 months, there's some reviews that happens between the government and the IMF. And based on the reviews at that point, now they are able to disburse some of the payments, some of the disbursements, or they are able to make the disbursements pegged on completion of some of the set reviews. So,
but what is the money for? What does it? This is what we're asking. So, what does it go to fund?
So for that, it's now part of the budget. Just to answer you, so it's now for the budget. So it doesn't go to a specific project. So it's part of. We have this 3 trillion budget, 4 trillion budget. We have this 3 trillion revenues. And then the balance is now financing. So it gets into the budget.
Okay.
So it does, but it gets into the budget as any other loan. It's just that here we don't have a specific project that is tied to that. So it's just, okay, it's money that is coming in at least to relieve Treasury from now coming to borrow that money from domestic sources, because as was the case even last year, when you're not able to complete the IMF program, when we're not able to get the World Bank DPO that was expected in last year ending June 2025. So the government now had to lean on borrowing from the domestic because they were not able to get this planned budget support from multilateral sources. It's just that now the money is not tied to any project, any specific project.
I mean, Churchill, one would ask a simple question. How is Kenya's economy doing? Because some of the indicators of an economy that is vibrant is when the locals, when taxpayers have disposable income. Because disposable incomes means that people have the money to be able to spend, which would then even support revenue in terms of government raising revenue for other business. So when you look at a country where disposable income is next to zero, what does that tell of that economy? Because even as we talk about Kenya's economy doing better, manufacturing has to be a conversation that is there. Industrialization has to be a conversation that is there. And value addition, because Kenya is considered to be an agricultural, a heavy country. But are we adding value to our products that we are selling at a premium and being able to then help raise revenue?
Okay, so how is the economy? I think it's a mixed bag. In the sense, if you look at the different macroeconomic variables, our GDP around 5% first quarter, inflation is not staggeringly higher. It hasn't even surpassed the upper target of 7.5%. So even despite the risk that played out US-Iran war, we haven't seen inflation flaring higher than the 7.5% that is the policy target. So inflation, GDP numbers, those numbers are as it is. But if you now get into the weeds in terms of the disposable income, because ultimately people are comparing, I don't have money this year. That's what the common one inch on the ground assesses how the economy is doing. And you've seen even from the statistics that has been given. So if you look at the GDP, what you described is now on the production side. In terms of, okay, we are producing the value add. So that's on the production side, because GDP actually means growth domestic production product. So on the production side of things. But you can flip it and look at it from an expenditure side and also an income side. Because the expenditure side speaks to, yes, there's production by the different sectors, be it agriculture, what they're producing, the industrial, the manufacturing, construction, the services, the ICT, finance. So all that is now on the production, the supply side. But the demand side is now how people are now spending their money on, what they're spending their money on. So that there are different components to that. We have now investments, because for you to be able to produce, you have to invest. If you're a manufacturer, if you're a business, if you're setting up a farm, so you have that component of investments. But largely we have what you call private consumption, what the private sector is consuming the goods. There's another element of government spending, consuming. The government is the largest consumer. But by and large, the biggest driver of the economic activities and what speaks to the person on the ground is the private consumption. And you've seen even the growth of private consumption coming lower. I think to 2022, 2021, 2022, thereabout, it was around 12% growth in terms of how the private consumption had grown. But if you look at the numbers that was presented in the economic survey, it had come lower to around 9%, 8%. So that means that even that consumption power is not as strong as it was. And also, if you look at it, that's on the expenditure side. If you look at it on the income side is now the profits by businesses. If you look at it, also the income, the wages that people are getting, which is significantly a significant aspect of the income. We've seen that also that income is not growing as fast as it used to go. So that speaks to the disposable income having been eroded. And because of that, yes, the economy is growing, but ideally should be growing at a faster rate than it is growing because of people are not spending more. And why are people not spending more? It's because the income is not as high as it used to be. Obviously, we've seen for the formerly employed people, the statutory deductions that have come in, the affordable housing levy that came in, the higher NSSF contributions, the shift from NHIF to SHA. So that speaks to a lower disposable income.
You look at government statistics, and at the macro level, the economy is really good. But at the micro, iko shida. What does that tell overall to an economy? Because at the micro level is where majority of taxpayers are.
Well, it speaks of an economy that is heavily geared towards capitalism, or favoring people with capital as opposed to people who are supplying the labor. Because if you look at the factors of GDP, there's labor, there's now the capital, there's now the combination of both technology. But now for an economy such as Kenya, and speaking directly to your question, that the person on the common Wananchi is not feeling the effects of this GDP, it speaks now to the labor component of that. So the economy, yes, is growing, but the people who are benefiting the most are the people who have the capital. So as and when, and also the discourse right now, if you hear the rhetoric that is starting to gain traction, even as you speak about Vision 2030, 2060, even hearing the politicians who are starting their campaigns. It's all about the jobs and also the money in their pocket. So by and large, that is how that is what will be playing largely. But now it speaks to how can the economy be tweaked in a way that now there's ample money, or there's money in people's pockets. Yeah.
The Treasury CS, John Buddy, the other day noted that Kenyans are imbibing in refreshments, and that is pointing directly to a growing economy. Noting that, I guess it is a luxury. So if you are drinking a soft drink, then that would point to the economy having grown. You laugh. Do you not agree?
Well, we've had some hilarious versions of that. I think there's another one. It's is it the miniskirt theory or the Big Mac theory? The bigger if you go to in the US economy largely, the bigger the pie that you get, McDonald's is an indicator of how the economy is growing. So I will take it from a hilarious stance where the CS was coming from, because that's not an indicator of how people are. Of how the economy is doing.
Really?
Because we've had various funny indications of how the economy is doing. So I will lump it as one of those rather than as a really serious indicator. So I think it was just a light-hearted moment from the CS. I'm not speaking on his behalf, but I will just sort of lump it as any of those.
You can say you hope that he was joking. It's really okay,
because you see, Cabinet Secretary one would assume that is government position. For the position that he holds. No?
Yeah. But anyway, I think it was just on a lighter note. There are so many factors that we could see, but it may not just be because the economy is doing, and now people are imbibing soft drinks. There's so many factors to it that we can pin down to an economic growth. So I'll just take it as it was, just one light-hearted moment from the CS.
In a few seconds, generally, how is Kenya's economy?
In a few seconds, I think it should be better than it is doing right now.
How is it now?
Right now, from the statistics, because we have to look at the statistics, it's and on a relative basis, if you compare with other countries, you can say that it's a fast-growing economy. It's not that a Kenyan phenomena, it's an East Africa phenomena. This East Africa region tends to be one of the fastest growing economies, regions, not only in Africa, but also in the world. So it's not just a Kenyan phenomena, but because it speaks of the diversified, we don't have some of the shocks that we've seen in other parts of the continent. Other places such as South Africa, if you compare, there's a bit of some structural issues that has sort of led to the anemic growth that is there. In other places in West Africa, there are those kind of leaning towards one. But in Kenya, East Africa, largely, we find that it's quite diversified.
Okay.
And as a result of that, so there's some resiliency, but more needs to be done so as to be able to ensure that the people get to feel this high economic growth that is reported in the headline numbers.
All right.
Churchill Ogutu is the Capital A Investment Bank Head of Research and has joined us this morning as we talk about Kenya's debt crisis. He seems hopeful. Let's see. All right. Thank you for being here this morning, Churchill.
Is the Situation Room the only way to start your day?